Warning, you are about to enter the BGP suite. No thongs, no boy shorts, no thigh highs, no commandos are permissible. BGP, big girl panties only. So pull up to woman up. And no, please don't leave with your panties in a bunch.
Welcome back to BGP, aka Big Girl Panties. And today we have a very special and distinguished guest, Mr. Judge Joe Brown.
Yay, yay. All right.
Actually,
Welcome.
the judge is a title. You don't have to say Mr. on top of it.
Oh.
Okay, sir. When you think about morality, standards,
It's important. It's a guideline for humans to behave appropriately toward each other.
I'm
When
trying
you
to
get rid
introduce you,
of it,
sir.
you have problems because the beast comes out.
I'm trying to introduce you, sir. Can you let me do my intro, please?
Oh, I thought you were asking a question. Sorry.
Can you put this on the double? Can you split the screen? There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, let's start this one more time. When you think about morality, principles, standards, honor, justice, intelligence, integrity, you have to think about Judge Joe Brown. Around 2018, I was blessed and had the honor to assist Judge Joe Brown on some business for a few days when he was in Los Angeles, California. And what I discovered about this man is that he is a gentleman. He's very kind. He is to be taken seriously. However, you know, women love to be women love a man that can make them laugh, and Judge Joe Brown can be very hilarious. He is very generous with his time when it comes to his people, whether it be day or late night. And as we went to and fro, I received a lot of history. He taught me about black race car drivers, black martial artists. We discussed fashion, travel, skiing. We talked about religion. We talked about the Obama administration. Judge Joe Brown is from California. He was born in Los Angeles, California. So I actually got some South LA history as well. I really found out why he became a judge. And then I began to pick his brain about some relationship questions. Welcome to BGP, Judge Joe Brown.
My pleasure, ladies.
How are you today, sir?
I'll manage.
So, Judge, you know we had some snow last week in California.
I know you did. I heard. Interesting. California every now and then can surprise you.
Yeah. So, there is a subject that is near and dear to my heart. And so I asked him a two-part question. The question that I asked was, why has it become so popular, a badge of honor and acceptable for both black men and black women to be proud to become baby mamas and baby daddies and have multiple children out of wedlock with multiple partners? Example, he got 4 baby mamas, she has 4 baby daddies. And Judge Joe Brown used a term that I only associated with slavery. So, Judge Joe Brown, can you give our audience the origin of a breeder?
Okay, what you're getting is the after effects of some aims of the institution of slavery. I had occasion to researched this when I was with a DC think tank 50 some years ago. And one of the things they tried to do was to put the elements of slavery in the slaves' culture so the slaves would effectively enslave themselves. So to cause your two-legged flocks of domestic animals, your herds of people slaves, people cattle,
Mute your phone.
to prosper, you encourage them to breed indiscriminately. And they put that in our culture. And unfortunately, by the end of the 1960s, what happened was that the Johnson administration, and I don't fault them because they didn't anticipate this, I don't think, put in place some ways of having children as a means to support yourself rather than needing to support yourself to support children. So that part of that slave culture still was in the minds of some people at that point. Not that many, but it worked. They bred quickly, they bred a lot, and now it has become spread as part of glorified dysfunction that is our culture. It's unfortunate, but that's what we have. We have gotten away from family and we've gotten into being people mills, like puppy mills. You used to be able to sell slaves or put them to work, and now it's just a custom that has prospered, unfortunately. And then you've got this other bunch over there that doesn't like this boys and girls 101 A and B. They aren't interested in the opposite sex, and they have been embarked on a half-century long quest to destroy the fabric of society so they can prosper in their ways without concern for tomorrow.
Would you
And
say
that's where
that?
we are right now.
Would you say that we are still being plagued with breeding?
We play ourselves. See, the crucial element is you don't have to continue to do this to slaves. It's just like with horses. If you keep the foal around, the horse group that it was born into, if that horse group is domesticated, it will domesticate the foal, and you won't have to work as hard to domesticate the animal. And we do this to ourselves.
So are you saying that it's DNA, or are you saying that it's
Culture.
irresponsibility? It's
Culture.
culture. Okay.
It's not all of us, but you see, one unfortunate thing we have is that for the last 120 some years, most young humans on the planet, or a lot of young humans on the planet Earth, have guided their early lives and the ideation that's in their head by what they see in the movies or now television or whatever else you get on social media. So when you see glorification of dysfunction, and that's what you see day in and day out, it becomes what
Ingrained.
winds everything up top. And we ideate the wrong way. See, it started off late mid 60s. And you had this group that hated that they weren't men. That's the feminists. That hated men. That's the lesbians. That hated they weren't strong men. That's the beta boys. Hated they weren't normal men. That's the gay boys. And then you had the ones that said they hated men because men caused war and the Nam was going on. So that was a group that acting together pledged to do something about destroying what they called a toxicity, masculinity. But you see, what they, of course, failed to deal with because it's the difficult path and it's the one that is most demanding of an individual is that right now we kill anything on the planet, everything, including ourselves. Like the elephant once was the greatest, and so and so now send $19 a month to World Wildlife to save the elephants, the polar bears, etc., the tigers, and Oscar has been chained in a kennel in the backyard in the cold and has never known love since 1995 or a month the ASPCA. Well, they've got send $19 a month to save a Negro because he's out there and he's not being saved from himself because he doesn't know he's supposed to. He's used to somebody opening his kibbles and bits and putting that in his feed dish and putting water out there for him. Now, why is that important? Because last I checked, you ladies aren't doing drive-bys these days, but the boys are. And if you don't train up the boys to be proper men, they never grow up to be men. And when you are not a man, you become dangerous because you are a male human, and we are the apex predator on the planet Earth. We kill better than anything that's ever been here. If they ever had a Jurassic Park for real and the T Rexes escaped, somebody would be going, George, Wilberforce and I were out there in the bush when a very large bull T-Rex surprised us, but I gave him both barrels, and there he is on my den wall. So when you do not deal with acculturating male youth, you've got a mess, because we're supposed to be about the very difficult duty and responsibility and obligation of making where we live a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, sense of purpose, morality, and ethics. And there we go with that morality bit. We are supposed to be men of public peace, dignity, and order who can be brave and courageous when necessary. But you see, it's difficult putting this into somebody's head, and you have to start when the creature is crawling around in the crib, and you have to reinforce it every day of that creature's life from cradle to grave. Because when it hits the fan, it's like, okay, the Titanic's going down again. And the men have to say, ma'am, you and your child may have my seat in the lifeboat, and I'll drown when the ship goes down. But that's my obligation as a man, and proud to be able to do it. But you see, that takes a lot. So now we've got the boys putting on dresses and trying to get in the lifeboat, and you have young females talking about they don't need protection. And I'll say that's a misconception, because 50 years of my professional life have been devoted to dealing with the consequences of what happens when one of these untamed, unacculturated male human predators gets loose, and what that creature can do. So we have to civilize ourselves, and if we don't civilize ourselves, it does not go well with us.
Who's responsible for civilizing ourselves?
We are.
Okay.
And so we participate in this right now because we are depopularizing the glorification of dysfunction. See, what happened is the movie industry was sinking down. Color TV was causing the Hollywood movie studios to go broke. So they got a new thing going. In 1967, you could spend 50 cents as an adult and go to one of the many movie theaters, and you saw one feature, another feature, several cartoons, and a short feature or a newsreel. You could walk in at any time, sit through everything 2 or 3 times if you didn't have anything to do. and they were going broke because the movies changed every Thursday and Sunday. So they got this bright idea when the old Hollywood crowd started to disappear, the new line that was coming out of school. They said, look, let's just come up with one movie. And we hype the devil out of that and we let it run as long as people will come. And instead of charging 50 cents, we charge $1.50, which in today's dollars would be between $45 and $50 to go see a movie. Now, aside from the absurdity of the public going for that, they had another bright idea. Gee, Tommy, we've got all of these black people, or are they calling themselves Afro-American these days? Not Negro anymore, Charles, not Negro. And they haven't seen themselves in movies. So maybe if we give them a lot of movies featuring them, they will come and spend their dollars. You know, like sometimes when you've got Sidney Poitier, excuse me, in one of the movies, you know, they come in and they spend a lot of money. And Lena Horne was always good, you know, when you darkened her up with the makeup a bit so they could identify. And by the way, let's not try and do any of this claptrap nonsense of trying to help them to better themselves. Let's go to the lowest common denominator so we can get all of them to come see themselves at the movie. So instead of glorifying the college student, a hardworking somebody, the dad and the mom and the sons and daughters that were trying to do something, they glamorize pimps, hoes, drug dealers, murderers, thieves, gangsters, and every other ne'er do well do wrong that we had in our community. Started off with Black Caesar, with Fred the Hammer Williams, a former football player. Then we went to Superfly with Rod O'Neal, and inside of 6 months, black folks stopped wearing dashikis and afros and started getting their hair fried and wearing pimp hats, pimp attire, driving pimp mobiles, and looking into seeing what this fabulous drug known as cocaine was about, which at the time was really too expensive for most to deal with. So you have that, and then you have this other thing that comes out of what they do exploiting the black woman. Let's take Pam Grier, all right, Foxy Brown. Now, they had two Foxy Brown sets of movies. The ones they showed in the United States where they had censorship at the time, and then the version they showed overseas, which you can now see on cable late at night. So she'd get in these fights. Sometimes she'd prevail. She usually got knocked out, but she'd recover, and that's all you saw. But in the version you see now, and in the version they were playing down in the black hoods, every time she got knocked out, a boob or both boobs would pop out of her very revealing top, or her tush would show at the bottom. And there were the obligatory 4 or 5 naked white women that just got out of the shower prancing around the apartment or what was supposed to be somebody's mansion. And it went downhill from there. And usually the motivation was, let's see, somebody's brother got killed by drug dealers, so she or they were getting revenge. And then later it would morph into, well, the brother had a thriving drug business, so they want to take over for the brother. And it quickly got to be just sick.
Okay, so, and you could correct me if I'm wrong. Initially, when the Welfare Act was instituted, it was for non-black people, and it was for to be able to keep the family intact and for them to keep their house during a recession
Yes.
or depression. Hold on one
Yeah.
second, sir. African American women were not allowed to get assistance. Somewhere down the line, when African American women were allowed to ask for assistance, it was still difficult for them to do so, and the rules had changed. Judge Joe Brown, did black women give up black men for welfare?
And not all black women, but too many of the ones that didn't have 2, 3, 4 kids that had 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14 did. Now, I just happened to work as an assistant teacher for the first Project Head Start that they had in Los Angeles. And that was in summer 1965. So since I was college bound and had a math major in high school and could do all this stuff, they had me dealing with a lot of the record keeping stuff. And sisters got welfare, they got the public assistance check. Most of the people that received it were white, but you have to understand that the generation that was in power right then had been young adults or mature adults during the Depression, which was in the 1930s. And this is in the 1960s, which is 30 years later, which in the scheme of things is not that long. That means that somebody who was a boss at 62 years old was 32 years old when it was going down, or was 18 or 19 now in their 40s. And they did not like what they recalled. So they were trying to do better. It was a safety net. Now, what happened was several things came into place here that were not good. The exploitation that Hollywood was doing, glorifying dysfunction. The fact that you had a lack of oversight over a lot of the institutions to whom this money was dispersed. And on the state level, particularly in the South, some of the people who were the great grandchildren or the grandchildren of the folk that had run slavery understood the breeding scheme. So they wanted to make sure that this did not result in strong families that would upset political realities in the South. So I know when I first started practicing law half century ago, a little more actually, wow. One of the main cases we had with this poverty law center I was in Tennessee was getting the check cut back on when a social worker had parked down the block with binoculars and was checking to see if any men were frequenting the place. Now, the woman might have had 3 or 4 baby daddies and 9 children, and maybe 1 or 2 of the daddies were trying to do right, but they got the check cut off. So they got told, don't come back. Meanwhile, since there was this avenue and also an ability to cripple unofficial but functional black families, juvenile courts and domestic courts that handle stuff like paternity and child support. I can take the sick place we had here in Memphis and Shelby County Juvenile Court. They had a clown named Kenneth Turner who was a 6th grade dropout, literally at the time. And he used to say, Negro, when you gonna pay for this boy here? Your Honor, this ain't none of mine. Look how dark I am. And she be messing around with this white man work down at International Hospital. But I want you to say that a white man is daddy. I don't care. You feeds him long enough and he darken up just like you. So you got people saying, hey, this is just a farce. I'm not in this. And you started getting this privatization 40 some years ago, 45 years ago, of these domestic courts where they became profit making entities. And if you can ensure long term profitability, you make more. and to ensure long-term profitability, destroy the family. That's going to result in inappropriate behavior.
Is that where title IVD came from? It's the reform title that they get kickbacks if you keep
Well, it's not
people.
so much that. It's like, take this clown here, Kenneth Turner, sixth grade dropout. Well, about 1981, 82, the state Supreme Court in Tennessee said that because of his educational deficiencies, he couldn't hear cases. He's the elected judge, but he can't hear a case. So he hired all these lawyers fresh out of law school he could control, and they'll let him set up a corporate entity to employ them. And they started ruining situations, and the money started going in. And years later, I would get stuff like, "Excuse me, officer, can you explain why you released this young person back to the custody of his mother? He's got 4 armed robberies for which he's been found administratively guilty, 6 aggravated assaults, 5 robberies. So you keep him 4 days, and I get this entry in this record that says, quote, child not amenable to institutional discipline nor control, therefore return to the custody of the mother." What is that? Well, Your Honor, to be candid, what's going on is that it costs more in manpower hours to deal with an unruly child, which reduces corporate profitability. Therefore, we send the child right back to the mother because they'll cycle through several times before we decide to say this child should be tried as an adult. And then, with due respect to the court, these courts down here take care of the problem because we weren't interested in it. We were trying to make money off of it. Now, that is one of the problems that you have. Also, the feminist movement seized on that because they were vehemently against marriage. I mean, at UCLA, I was a member of the class of 69 for UCLA. And I can remember speaker after speaker on that campus, and we had about 65,000 full-time students at the time. They would come in and talk about how poisonous marriage was, and it was an institution of slavery for women, and it was a positive evil. And they started advocating that women not get married and just have babies and then don't even tell the SOB he was the daddy, because if you wanted to mess up a child, have a father around. And you had unisex child rearing, unisex child clothing, unisex child hairdos. Boys couldn't play with cap guns or water pistols, but they were encouraged to play with dolls. Being a man was associated in the common mind with being logical, rational, reasonable, and all this other stuff. And they said that causes war because hostility and aggression builds up. And they wanted the boys to be raised as girls. So let's see, what was the mantra? Men need to learn to express themselves, to emote, to shout, to cry, and let it all hang out instead of being so uptight and under self-control, because that causes tensions to build and it leads to war, etc. So you started taking the apex predator on the planet, discouraged him being under self-control, and encouraging it to become emotional, and you got a mess. Now, when I was on the bench, I got elected to 2 8-year terms on the bench. I found over this 10-year period that they were doing this study in Tennessee that whereas the statewide recidivism rate for this 10-year period remained consistent at 80%, I was able to drop it down to 18%. And the way I dropped it down to 18% sounds simple, wasn't quite in execution, but there are some classical methods of doing it. And what it was is putting in the heads of the young men and women a purpose and a cause. And for the boys, I relied on the fact that they wanted to become men. And you hear them now, yo, Judge, with due respect, man, like I'm 21, I ain't gonna make 25. Somebody gonna keep me from being alive. So I'm already a dead man. So I come back at him and okay, fine. Since you're already dead, you make an ideal hero since you're ready to die anyway. Why don't you be about something? So when you look in the mirror every day, you say to yourself, hey, dude, man, did you act a man yesterday? You gonna be a man today and do better and prepare yourself to be a better man tomorrow so you have a purpose and a cause, so where everything's coming down on your shoulders, you're not giving up because you're still fighting for the team. And you may not see any daylight at the end of your tunnel. You might not make it out alive, but it's your duty and obligation to kill off the fire-breathing Gila monsters that are setting flames and creating all the smoke that's obscuring the daylight at the end of that tunnel. That's your job. And to this day, 30 years later, 25 years later, I get people walking up to me in Memphis, Judge, you remember me? No, sir, I don't. Well, you gave me some time. Did I give you enough? No, see, it was that thing about manhood. Now I got 6 grandchildren, 4 children. They all went to college. I've been married for 26 years, 27 years. And, I've been right. I haven't done any more wrong, and I've got 8 or 9 boys in the neighborhood. I'm trying to teach what you taught me. And you see, it worked back for the Roman legions. It works for the Marine Corps, or at least it used to. It worked for the Knights. It worked for the MPs, for Shaka Zulu in South Africa 200 years ago. It works. So we just have to get back to it. But too many nowadays don't want it because it raises some difficult points. And by the way, ladies, if you're dating somebody, put this to them. Say, okay, just imagine in your head, brother, yes, 300 years ago, you're back in Africa, 500, 1,000 years ago, way back when you went off to go on a small hunt to go get something to feed your family and a few of your neighbors, and you come back and you have an antelope or a deer across your shoulder. And as you turn a bend in the forest or you get to the rise on the plains, you notice there's a war party from a rival tribe that's about to fall on your people and kill them. Nobody's looking, not a soul. Do you sneak off and save yourself? Do you risk your life to warn your people? Or do you warn your people and then give up your life attacking the enemy from the rear so that your people can get extra time to save themselves? What's your answer? And if the guy says, nobody's looking, I'm leaving, you need to leave him because you don't need to be with him. Because if the Titanic is going down, you're going to be in the water, not him.
Agreed. I agree.
By
So,
the way, I have a statement. Men and women have an equal value, but we do different things, so we're not equal.
Agreed.
Because is an apple equal to an orange? Well, as far as fruit goes, they might both have equal value to your system, but a good orange is not necessarily a good apple, and a good apple ain't necessarily the other way around either.
Mm-hmm.
So it's each of them would have equal value to well balanced nutrition,
Mm-hmm.
but we are different. Vive la différence, boys and girls. And by the way, we got to get unstuck on stupid and pay attention to what's being sold to us. Do you know there hasn't been a single black piece of legislation in 30 some years, uh, actually about 50, to come out of Washington, D.C.? Don't say Emmett Till anti-lynch bill.
Mm-mm.
By the way, When you think of a lynching, what do you think of?
Black people.
You ever see a Western, old time one? Boys, ain't nobody gonna take this Legree out of this jail while I'm the sheriff. We gonna give him a fair trial before we hang him. Now you boys get back before I gotta take one of you out. You know, there is a very high number of the recorded lynchings in America occurring in the West when one cowboy who shot somebody down in a drunken brawl got lynched by some other folk in the town. See, so it's not just a black thing, but you think of a mob, don't you?
Yes.
Well, under the new Emmett Till anti-lynch bill, one, you don't need a mob.
Right.
Two, you don't even need a killing. Three, it can be a kidnapping. Or four, I guess you could term it a beating. And let's see how that works out. You know, we have those who want to identify with the opposite sex and they try to dress like it or maybe go get implants or whatever they want to do so they can fake it. And let's say this guy, he's a good guy, he broke up with his significant other. She put him down or he messed up and she had to leave him. Doesn't make any difference for this little vignette, but he's in a bar or a club. He's drinking, and there's this what looks to be PYT sitting over there across the bar. You know, she earring, all this and that, tight skirt on, and they get to drinking and dancing on the floor, and they get to exchanging spit back in the shadows and everything. And then dude notices, wait a minute, this babe getting a hard on.
Oh my God.
Oh, hell no. And busted in the jaw. Spits a lip. Do you know that is federal lynching?
Yeah.
Now?
Yes.
And what they did is for the first time in American legal lexicon, they interjected gender orientation as a protected category. So was this about protecting black folk from being lynched? No, because everything you need, including some anti-Knight Rider bills from the early 1870s, 150 years ago, are still in place. And the other thing is Tuskegee Institute, and this is not to be confused with so-called Tuskegee experiment, which wasn't an experiment, it was a study. For a century, kept track of lynchings in America. Last lynching that they record as such that qualified as that was in 1963. It was those three civil rights demonstrators, two white, one black, down in Mississippi. They don't even classify what happened to Emmett Till as a lynching. And by the way, neither did his mother or somebody you ladies need to interview, Dr. Clenora Hudson Weems. 30 years ago, Emmett Till's mother identified her to me as the family historian. And she has written a whole lot on Emmett Till. As a matter of fact, she's most upset about plagiarism having been committed in terms of one of her students getting all the claim to fame for writing what was behind this new movie on the subject, Till, which causes her to be outraged for it being so inauthentic. Now, they agree that Till did not get lynched. He got murdered. Okay? So now we have, oh, see, they protecting black folk from hate crime. if you're dead and buried, I mean, if the dude hated you because of what you were and he's got the death penalty, do you think that's going to help you out in it? No, but it's a good way to bamboozle you into supporting something that has nothing to do with you, but it's got to do with that.
Agenda.
What do they call them now? Tranny, faux women who are camouflaged as something they aren't. And they get busted in the mouth and get a loose tooth or a split lip. And now the feds get involved. Like, what the hell did that have to do with black folks?
Oh Lord.
Judge Brown, I want to go back to welfare because I really want to clear this up because it's something that's been said over and over and over again. So my next question is, here's the scenario. Me and you are married. I'm a stay-at-home mom. You lost your job. We have multiple children. We're about to be evicted. The cupboards are bare. What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to save my family and save my husband and we all die together? Or are you supposed to leave, find a job, allow me to get this assistance, and come back and reclaim your family?
Actually, it's not necessary for him to leave. There are forms of assistance available where
Thank
you can
you.
have the man
Thank
and
you.
woman in the house.
Thank
But
you.
a lot of people don't know that. On my show, we had a reoccurring theme: the landlord suing the Section 8 tenant or tenants. And oftentimes there would be man and woman, and they either had
On the
mutual
yep.
children or they
the
had
same
separate
grant.
children that they had commingled. Now, they got Section 8, but there was an interesting thing. Over 15 years, we had a lot of these cases, but invariably they involved the same thing. And it makes you wonder, and I'll tell you what it is. Over and over and over again, it involved plumbing. And what the problem was is that somebody didn't teach these children how to wipe, and they'd take a whole roll of toilet tissue and stuff it down. And the plumber would testify, Your Honor, there was 17 feet of compacted toilet tissue that had to be removed. Or there was 9 feet of compacted toilet tissue. Like, you know, but yeah, we get it. And see, the thing about Section 8 is interesting. I remember one case where the rent was $2,750 a month, and the tenant was paying $11. The rest of it was paid by the assistance program.
Right.
Now, I don't have any problems with it so much if it's as you described, where there is an emergency. But there was a friend, a late friend. He's also a good musician too, but he was over these things for public housing in Memphis 30 some years ago. Hell, I just thought about it. I met my last wife at his funeral. He got killed in an automobile accident. But we were looking at the dynamics of people who were in public housing on a generational basis, where, in other words, one generation in its entirety had been in public housing. The following generation had been in its entirety in public housing. The third generation in the same family had been in public housing. The fourth, and I had some in my courtroom who were the fifth generation in public housing. And guess what? All five generations were still alive. Wow. Now, when we went into it, it's like something's wrong with it. And I'll tell you a dirty little secret. We published it, but nobody was interested. We found that in Memphis public housing, it was fairly easy to trace ancestry, because getting in there, you had to there were quite a number of disclosures and investigative reports. So we found that more than 90% of the people who had been in public housing for 3 generations or longer had ancestors who were slaves on plantations where they had more than 200 slaves on the plantation. Now, if you want to see how bad the program gets, 1994, I had a 57-year-old woman in my courtroom. She had felony drug and theft charges. I had her 43-year-old daughter born when she was 14. That was her second oldest child. The 43-year-old daughter had a 34-year-old daughter. That's the third generation. And the 34-year-old daughter was born 1 week before her 10th birthday. The 34-year-old daughter, well, she had a 32-year-old brother who was in my courtroom, born to the 43-year-old, and a 31-year-old sister in my courtroom, born to the 43-year-old. But let's get back to 57, 43, 34. The 34-year-old had a 21-year-old. That's the fourth generation in my courtroom. The 21-year-old, when I sentenced her for the same kind of charges, she had an 11-year-old girl pregnant with her second child. So that's 6 generations. And the matriarch was 57 years old in my courtroom. Now, 14 months later, the 57-year-old was now 59. The 21-year-old was now 23. The 11-year-old daughter of the 23-year-old was now 13 with 3 children. So this is in 1997. By 2000, 3 years later, I had 120 of this woman's children in my courtroom. She was now 62 going on 63. She came back, I remember 1 week when I was making her eyeball me because she'd messed up. And 1 week she had 342 lineal descendants. 2 weeks later, she had 358. By 2000, I had more than 120 of her lineal descendants in front of me as criminal defendants. And this woman had 3,400 traceable lineal descendants, and she's 62 years old. One of the idiots, it was her descendant, was a 29-year-old who had, guess what, 64 children by different baby mamas, never paid a dime child support. He had a cousin 2 years older who had 47 outside children, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we get a real mess. We put her together with 4 other people, one of them white, who had a lot of black admixture in her family. And we were doing another study to see where the trouble came in from Memphis high schools. So we would have out of, say, 4,700 members of the student body, 2,800 members of the student body, we'd have 15 to 20 core misfits that were setting up the negative culture. Tennessee didn't have any age-related mandates on what grades you were in. So as long as you turned 20 while you were still enrolled in school, you could keep going throughout that year. So we'd have 19 and 20-year-olds in the 10th grade. And we would have 16, 17-year-olds in the 5th grade. And they got put in the 5th grade because this corrupt juvenile court would save on manpower hours by sending a little 5'4" lady who is a teacher to be deputy jailer to a 6'3" tall 17-year-old in her 5th grade class who had impregnated 2 of the 5th grade girls. So you see, you have these problems going on. So you have to get to the boys about doing a man up thing and tell them to throw this dysfunction out of their heads, because how often do you hear, "Yay, man, it's about pimping, man," or "pimp your ride, man," you see. And then with the ladies, I used to run a counseling session, and in order to get in one of my counseling sessions, you had to have female head of household status and at least one male child 13 or over in the public school system. So when we'd have our first session, I'd let them go at it. "Judge, I don't understand what you're talking about when you say we need to understand the role of men in raising children." "Yeah, girlfriend, what you need a man for?" "I hear you, honey. They ain't worth nothing. They just good for one thing, girl." "I hear you, honey." They do it for high five. So I'd listen and listen. I said, "Okay, do you want your boys to grow up to be men?" "Yeah, we want them to be men. We don't want them to be no sissies." I said, "Well, how the hell are you going to raise them to be men if you don't know what they're supposed to be good for when they get grown?" Duh. "Okay, now shut up and listen. I'm on a school. You better listen to him." "Well, I didn't know, honey. I know your child. He's 13 and a half. You wait till he get 15, and instead of you looking down on him, he's looking down on you. You better listen."
Judge Joe Brown.
So we've got a lot of work to do.
I'm going to piggyback off of that right quick. From what we're hearing out in these YouTube streets, they are saying that women have to be in control of their own vaginas and in control of men's penises. So they're saying that men can go out here and sleep with anybody, and it's our responsibility to make sure that they have penis discipline.
Do you agree?
Let's put it this way. I'd always ask, when you got pregnant, did you get raped?
No.
Why didn't you choose to keep your legs closed or screw wisely? And by the way, there's an interesting thing going on right now to show you how really pathetic it's gotten. This goes for black, white, brown, red, yellow, Catholic, Protestant, Baptist, Methodist, Episcopalian, Presbyterian. It goes for Jew. It goes for Muslim. It goes for Hindu. It goes for Buddhist. There are more boy virgins 25 and under than there are girl virgins.
Wow.
Today. So it's a select number of boys getting all the booty. And more booties being given up than boys are getting booty. So it's weird. And in other words, see, you come from a good background. Well, you can call it that. I grew up in South Central LA. Yeah, but you know the difference between me and you? My mom and dad screwed wisely. Yours didn't. That's why you came out being such a jerk and such a dummy.
Define.
And see,
define screwing wisely.
In other words, don't go to bed with anybody.
Does it mean
that ain't somebody you don't want to be caught walking down the middle of the street with all your friends looking at high noon? That's what I tell the young men. I say, I used to walk on the mall, Main Street Mall downtown, or Main Street before they turned it into a mall in Memphis. It'd be funny. I just cruise for lunch, and I'd watch the sights, listen to the sounds, and go, "Hey, man, Earl, man, check this out, man. See Slick Ray, man, she fine, man. Take notes, man. I'm gonna school you, man, on game, man. Hey, baby. Hey, Slick Ray. Yeah, baby. You heard me. I didn't even have to open my mouth. You heard me when you turned the counter, baby, because you could feel me through the air, mama. Yeah, you was looking for me. I can tell. Oh, well, the hell with you then. Ain't nobody want your skanky behind in the first
That's
place.
what they do.
Attitude, you know, it'd be funny. But you see, nowadays, what you hear, hey man, Stomp, man, what's wrong, man? Man, he ain't hear no, man, you need to get laid, man. You want you some pee, man? Well, man, look, go on down there on 22nd Street, man. You know where they got that dead end, man? There always be this chick up there, Tomadika, man. Big old heavy chick, man, up in a rocking chick. She weighed about 280 pounds, man. And she said, now she ain't got 4 teeth, man, but she give great head, man. Just walk down the street like you minding your business, man, and just stop, turn around and stare and say, baby, you show fine. She give you some before the, you can turn around, walk back to the end of the block. Okay. Run into them again. They'd be out doing lunch. Man, you get you something. Yeah, man. I don't know whether I was getting nookie or getting fold, man, but I got me something, man. How many children does Tomadika have? 12, 13, 15. And you say, hey, what are you doing? And then you have, I won't mention a name, but they named the sea cow after her that they rescued in the Toledo, Ohio Zoo in their marine section.
What's a sea cow?
Always walking around naked. Don't even have to wear a G-string because you can't see what she got. And she ain't had any children, but she's hanging down looking south of the equator. I mean, and gets up in the Staples Center of the Lakers game with big hole cut out the back of her thigh-length T-shirt and twerking. What kind of image is that to be showing to the youth?
True.
And objectification of beauty. I hate to say this. Some people are beautiful inside. They're really sweet. They're nice people. Their moms and dads did not screw wisely.
Gotta screw wisely.
And they aren't the best looking things in the world. But beauty, physical prowess, and sisters, I know you love to look at them brothers that look like they've been pumping that iron. I used to have my first mother-in-law ran a beauty salon for 35 years, and I'd have to go in there and run errands for her, and my ears would get hot listening to what you ladies are talking about. Girl, look what he got up in there. Yeah, you do that. So, you see, when there is this kind of choice to go after looks, humans evolve. We've been around here anatomically modern for 250,000 years. But we don't look like chimpanzees and Australopithecines cavemen anymore. We look like we do. Because there were things that folks say, oh, that turns me on. Yeah, I like that. So I don't know what the devil's happening here. It's like, what's going on? Like, use some discretion, man. You want to get stuck paying child support to that for the next 18 years? What's the matter?
I don't know.
And then I get the other one from the sisters. Judge Brad, I got a problem. What is that? I thought I was falling in love with this. Then I found I had a rival. And what was her name? Wasn't her name. His name was Earl.
Lord.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh.
Judge jump around.
I mean, what's happening here? And somebody I knew used to work with this judge, man. I was in Atlanta at the airport, man. I saw the finest woman I'd ever seen in my life. I got up enough nerve to go say something to her, and it turned out to be a boy.
Okay. We not gonna do this. Judge O'Brien, I got another question for you.
Okay.
Judge O'Brien, and I'm being very serious.
Trying to make you laugh. You said that up front.
You funny. But We gotta get serious. Joshua Brown, there are a lot of women that make being on the welfare a career, and I am totally against that. I think for the other single mothers that go out and work their behinds off, that don't get $11 a month rent, they can't get housing, they can't get medical, they can't get EBT cards when things get hard. How long do you think that a mother should be allowed to be on welfare?
Let's put it this way. It should be work or study fair. In other words, as part of the receipt of the benefits, you have to either work at something that needs to be worked at. We've got a lot of infrastructure, a lot of trash that needs to be picked up, a lot of things that need to be dealt with, or you need to study. Excuse me, somebody tried to call. So if I'm going to spend tax dollars on helping you out, then you have to be doing what's necessary to try and get out or get off.
I agree.
I think it should be about 18 months, 6 months of
Well,
education. Hold on. 6 months of reinvesting yourself back in the workplace, and then about 6 months for them to every month wean you off of welfare. It's not fair that they get to stay on welfare like that. And there's people out here that really need it. It's for people with special needs, disabilities, and these people are just sitting on their behinds month after month collecting the check. It's not good for them. It's not good for the children.
I agree with you 100%, but you have to understand the bigger picture that needs to be addressed. Now, you also hear when it deals with the boys, the schoolhouse to jailhouse pipeline.
School to prison pipeline, yes, sir.
You know what that's about?
Yes.
Bet you don't. Same thing with keeping somebody on welfare. See, the only industrialized country in the world that does not have a coherent program to deal with the increasing obsolescence of the traditional workforce in the face of industrial technology and computerization is the United States. We say leave it to private enterprise, but private enterprise is about profit. So when you don't have enough jobs to go around that pay a wage scale that those who have the right mindset would be satisfied with, and you don't want Timothy McVeigh types buying $200 worth of ammonium nitrate fertilizer and blowing up a courthouse in Oklahoma City anymore, what do? Well, consider labor as a commodity like wheat, corn, cotton, soy, beef, pork, poultry. What do you do when you get a commodity glut? Three things: cut back production, subsidize the producer, store the surplus. Our surplus is stored in a jail cell, not a grain silo. The subsidy is the assistance check and benefits. Cutting back a production is the focus on this glorification of dysfunction. So the youth, male or female, drop out, drug out, bang out, meaning they get in gang stuff, get knocked up too early or too often. That's the girls, and they get kept on welfare and they're out of the job market. Develop inappropriate attitudes, outlooks, worldviews, way of carrying selves, negative body language, failing to acquire vocational skills or academic needs being neglected, and generally making where they live an area of chaos that cannot indulge itself in the political process for collective self-help. When they go to the penitentiary and they get warehoused, some people think, well, they want the free labor of the 13th Amendment. No, that's not what it's about. Hell, anytime you get locked up, they put you in a condition of slavery because you can't exercise your own free will. But they don't want your free labor, though they do have inmates laboring, but that's because idle people get all kinds of mischief. So you don't want them idle and get in mischief, so you have make work. Let them stamp out some license plates, saves money. But that's not why they're in there. You want them out of the job market. When they continually stay on welfare or public assistance, and you figure out that 100% of what's given to them as assistance is going to be spent, and some of the people who complain the loudest about welfare actually represent a class that gets the most benefit out of the welfare payment because they run or finance the wholesalers that supply the shelves at the corner stores that get the food stamps and the checks. And they have investments in athletic shoe stores where anytime somebody gets a hands-on extra, they run down to buy a pair of Air Jordans or something for everybody in the family and the two boyfriends on the side. So yeah, it's to keep people from glutting the labor market. Now, somewhere along this line, somebody's going to have to do something about that. Quick anecdote. 1980s, I was with a legal team, and we had to go up to Louisville, Kentucky, and we interviewed a management and got a tour of the factory of a very large sporting goods firm. They had a huge warehouse and they had 4,500 plus employees who worked 3 shifts. Well, 10 years later, I go back in the 1990s as a guest of a community organization to speak with some of them. Okay. I go to the same place. They have less than 150 employees, and most of them are security because they've completely automated the whole operation. 4,500 people have gotten pink slips saying, buy sucker, forget your mortgage, car note, your savings account, your medical benefits, life insurance, trying to make life better for your children. We're corporate downsizing because 2 of our guys want to be billionaires before they hit 50. So bye bye, fool. Thank you for your service, sucker. And nobody cares.
Yeah.
Did you have a question for him? Did you have a question?
I did. I
Okay,
enjoyed
so
this conversation.
Judge Joe Brown, I know you know that there are gender wars going on. So I want to ask you a question. The men told the women to stop fooling with Pookie and Ray Ray. Pookie and Ray Ray will be your
Talking
thugs.
about Obama Tang.
What?
I don't like him. Full confession.
No, wait a minute. That's not what I'm saying. Listen to my question.
Don't mess with Pookie and Ray Ray. Yeah, he said that.
No, I'm saying men, YouTubers, content creators, they're telling women to leave Pookie and Ray Ray alone and get with a high value man. Not a high value man of morals and character, a man that makes over 6 figures. And so the lady said, okay. So now they're saying that the women have entitlement issues. They have too high of expectations and they don't qualify for a high value man. What are your thoughts?
Screw wise.
That's
Screw
that's
wisely.
an awesome answer.
Now, I had an 8-figure income.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Not 6, not 7, but 8. All right. Didn't make 9, but I had 8. Now, it's about character. Duty, honor, obligation, responsibility, and accountability. I'm still surprised I'm walking around alive, not from health issues, but from doing what you needed to do because it was exciting. But I won't go into that. But, you know, see, a lot of people have been given this thing about you're entitled. You want, so you should get it. Nobody gets first, second, or third place anymore. Everybody gets a participation ribbon. You want it, wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. Your dreams come true. Walt Disney nonsense. And Mickey Mouse ain't real. Granted, I've seen some that remind me, and Minnie Mouse with those big shoes, with some of the women's fashions with these big clunky things some of them wear these days. I'm not surprised that they haven't been looking at Minnie Mouse, but it ain't real. You see, most of the time humans have been on this planet, outside of the last few decades, it is not a safe place. Look what happened in Turkey. Tsunamis, earthquakes, lightning strikes, volcanoes, hurricanes, typhoons, uh, meteorite. 4 people got hit by a bolt of lightning standing in front of the White House under a tree in a quick DC rain. By the way, I was born in DC but raised in LA, kindergarten through law school.
Okay.
But I guess I'm a native Los Angelito. And been in Memphis. I didn't pop out of anybody's nookie in Memphis. I wasn't born there, but I voluntarily moved there. That's why I'm running for mayor of Memphis, trying to restore sanity to the place. Now,
I have
these
I have
things,
2 more questions for you, Judge O'Brown, and I'm gonna let you get up out of here. Can you be head of the household and pay 50-50?
well, let's put it this way.
Screw wisely.
This head of household thing came about in an interesting way. Who's going to defend the household if it gets invaded?
The man, supposedly, allegedly.
Hopefully.
What happens is this domestic thing came about because the man was the military commander of the household. Now, I studied these things intensively, but interestingly enough, let's go back 500, 600 years, 700, high Middle Ages, knights in shining armor. The baron was obviously the baron, but you know who ran the household? His wife. That was her job. But when it came to those things that dealt with defending the castle, he was the boss. Most wise men say, let the woman run the damn house. You know, if whoever's got the best leadership when it comes to that, fine. But who's got to get the flack, and when the Gila monsters are at the front door breathing fire, who's got to take them on?
What about who has the most money?
What's that got to do with a burglar's breaking in the middle of the night? But then again, there is a poison that comes in here when the woman is better at earning in today's world than the male or man she's affiliated with. You can see that with some of the celebrities. What is this with uh, Rihanna on the cover, leading her little simping along husband, I guess, kissing the baby? From a man's perspective, that looks absolutely disgusting. But
Would you
softer kind of
would you
gentler,
say
I
that's
guess.
would you say that cover is negative media
Yeah, I know what it is. I had to deal
propaganda?
with those folks for 15 years. They're trying to put down men because if men self-defeat by believing the propaganda and emasculating themselves, then they get to run things. But you see, you know where that running stuff comes in? You've got your master's degree. You're upstairs in your 2-floor condo. It's a nice place, 2, 3 bedrooms, good neighborhood. You've got a meeting where you're conducting it 9 o'clock the next morning. You're going to make the main presentation. You're smiling and you're reading your nice novel, sipping a glass of Chablis. And you say, oh, it's bedtime. Let me turn the lights out. Put your part finished glass of wine on the nightstand. You turn the lights out, and you've drifted almost off to sleep when you hear breaking glass down on the first floor. Now, would you rather have to go down there and deal with it yourself? Would you rather have a boy laying up next to you who's hiding under the bed while you went down to deal with it? Or would you rather have a competent man who can get up and go deal with it?
But you didn't answer my question.
I did.
No, you didn't, sir. So okay. You
Read
so
between the
you said
lines.
you.
I asked you the
I don't want
question.
to read between the lines. You know why? Because it's just not a conversation between you and I. We have people that are listening, and this is a war that's going on. They're saying
I
that a
got it,
man
but
cannot lead unless he makes more money than a woman. So I want.
yeah, but wait. See what I'm doing? One of the problems that I face is that people don't think. So instead of spoon feeding you an answer, yeah, what he said so and so, I might be full of crap. Think about it and what comes in your head when you think about it. Now, what I said was men had their position of deference in the household because they were the military commander.
Yes, sir. I got that.
All right. Maybe his fortune came from his in laws. Somebody was an earl or a duke, and he got the lands he runs through his wife. She brought the money into the relationship, but he's the warlord. So he lets her run the household until it comes to a matter of defense or furthering the big purpose, which is where he comes in. He's the warrior, he's the warlord, he's the military commander. So I'm telling today's people that men ought to be making as much or more
Thank you.
than their female spouses, or at least be on a commensurate position because they're into a matter of intellect. Like, what if Einstein had married a very rich woman? You see, what if somebody who is a brilliant theoretical physicist or a chemist or a doctor encounters a woman who inherited a fortune? You see, these things can get interesting, but it's got to do with who can do what best. But as a matter of point, I don't care what you are, whether you're the scientist, you are the career military man, you are a cop, or you work in a factory. It's your job to defend the household. And it's your job that if something breaks downstairs in the wee hours of the morning, you go down there to see about it. Now, that's what I'm saying, and that's why we have it. So read between the lines.
Thank you very much. I have one last question for you. Every other race of people deal with child support, alimony, feminism, having children out of wedlock, single mothers, and makeup, cosmetic surgery, and things of that nature. And somehow, in the system that they call white supremacy, they are able to build an economy for themselves, for their race, for their women and children. My question for you is this: are black men prohibited from creating a black economic system for their people?
There's no such thing as a black, white, brown, red, yellow economic system.
There are sub economic systems that races have.
Yes, but everybody participates in it. And if you go back to the middle of the last ice age, 50,000 years ago, you're going to find that humans all over the planet tried to expand into trade and communications with each other. So nobody stays isolated. If you get a DNA test, you'll find out how mixed up you are and where you came from. Might surprise you. Now, that said, everybody seems to carve out a niche, or
Yes, sir.
get a piece of the pie.
Yes,
We
sir.
don't, because we do it to ourselves. Let me ask you a question. If you carefully managed your money and you found that with some degree of sacrifice, you could afford to give up 20, 25% of it, where would you send it? To the bank, make wise investments, or put it in the collection plate at your church?
Definitely not the collection plate at my church.
A whole lot of us would. I have some friends who were economists at UCLA. 1987, I was visiting them, and they gave me a spreadsheet. One of them included Memphis, and they said, "You recognize these institutions?" I said, "Yeah, that's some of the black churches in Memphis. It's not all of them." I said, "Do you realize over the following time period, they've committed themselves to spending $6 billion on mortgages? And where could you be as a group of people if that $6 billion went into viable investments?" You
Absolutely.
see, we do it to ourselves. Okay, Black Wall Street, we make a myth out of that. First off, what happened in Tulsa happened in 122 other
Yeah.
locations in the same period between late 1918 and
21,
1923. That's 5
23.
years.
Okay.
So, what happened with the rest of the places? You talk about Tulsa, nobody owned any property rights in Tulsa that was black. They rented them, everything in there was rented from the Native American tribe that controlled the area. All right. We had some interesting stuff, but we suffered high casualty rates because we weren't prepared. Meanwhile, a little bit of black history here. Washington, D.C., 1919, there was an uprising. Some Southern whites decided going to kill them some black folk. So some black veterans who had just gotten discharged from the army got some black Pullman car porters to smuggle guns from Baltimore into D.C. They got on the roofs of the tenements and started shooting the racists who were trying to burn down the tenements. That, by the way, is one of the few examples in American history where more white people died during a race riot than black people did. And Woodrow Wilson, the Democratic president, who was a racist, who had been a professor at the University of Virginia, was a staunch segregationist and deeply believed in the inferiority of black folk. He called out the cavalry to put it down, but it still wound up more white people died than black folk did because they were prepared to defend it. Now, you see, today, most of our black men aren't prepared to defend anything, even the thugs down in the hood. They aren't really doing a man up thing down there. They're trying to die because they have nothing to live for. They have no purpose to die for. They just don't want to be here. And it's a form of suicide. You've heard of suicide by cop,
Yes, sir.
it's suicide by your neighbor. So we do all kinds of stuck on stupid stuff. Uh, you get some black folk killed by white cops or other cops, but 10, 12 times as many get killed by their own neighbors. We had this thing in Memphis. You had one guy got beat up by 5 cops who were black. Was the police out of control, or some young men who got out of control who happened to be cops? The streets didn't get mad. Why didn't they get mad? Because the allegations were is that the deceased was dealing with the baby mama of one cop, dealing with the wife of another cop, and trying to deal with the wife of a third cop. And the family that's running around hollering allegedly didn't even raise the boy. So people are saying, mm-mm. And then you had a local hyenas trying to feed off the body. So we get mythology ramped up that doesn't deal with the real deal. What was wrong out there? is you tried to be politically cute in Memphis and you set up Blue Crush 3 years ago to give somebody you brought in to be politically correct to be the new chief. You changed the name to the Scorpion Unit. Forgot about the fact that Blue Crush got created by citizen demand upon the police department to do something about crime. And then you get caught up in all of the hype where Kamala Imhoff comes, Al Sharpton comes, Ben Crump comes, and the local hyenas and vultures tried to play it up as what it was when the real problem was you didn't have effective command authority in the police department. The mayor's office was inept and not under control and was in there for other purposes besides leadership. So you got a real live mess, and nobody fit to exercise leadership and take charge, which is a problem we have all across the board. I almost interrupted when you tickled me. You said plastic surgery. For goodness sakes, we had our first president that had plastic surgery,
Who was that?
and he was running. You don't know?
No.
The idiot that's in there right now. He got all the
Oh,
bags
Biden.
removed under his eyes right when he was
His
running.
skin is
Yeah,
tight. It is.
he's old.
Yeah, he a little tight in the face.
Yeah, you know, I mean, think about it.
Judge Joe Brown, there was somebody that asked me to ask you this. Where can they find your barbecue sauce?
Okay, I'm gonna give you two websites.
Okay.
One, if you want sauce, jjbbbq.com. That's Judge Joe Brown barbecue.com.
Okay.
That's sauce. And I'm also about service. I'm running for mayor of Memphis. That's Judge Joe Brown, JJB. I'm running for mayor in 2023. So that's JJB2023.com.
Okay.
And if you have a Cash App, you can contribute $ Judge Joe Brown
I hope you
2023.
send me
I
cash
heard
out.
that.
JJB in 2023 for mayor of Memphis, Tennessee. Send Brown downtown and take back your town.
Final thoughts, ladies.
I just want to say thank you. It's been a pleasure to listen to you today. Thank you for joining us on BGP and sharing your thoughts on welfare. That is just a topic that is always, I've always wanted to see something different happen with those programs, because I worked for welfare for 14 years, and just to see that vicious cycle and you sharing your thoughts and concerns about that really that was helpful. So hopefully we can come up with something that will help people get off and want to stay off. And I understand that part of being stagnant and scared to make moves, but we got to help our folks, because I'm telling you, it is a vicious cycle that is hard to get out of. Thank you.
You can't do anything if you have no heart.
Right.
You have to be brave, and you have to have physical and moral courage. And nothing much comes free. I know some billionaires personally. I lived up in Aspen for 10 years, used to ski a lot. My ex was a ski instructor, and everybody wanted to go ski with Madam Brown. She was a hot shot, movie star fine. So when I had some interesting people over at my house for dinner from time to time. A lot of them you read about in the papers and stuff. And I'll say this, most of those multimillionaires and billionaires worked a minimum 50, 60 hours a week minimum, and then they played hard when they wanted to play. And even when there was someplace to play, they stayed up 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning every morning to do what they needed to do. So nothing comes easy. And remember what the other thing is? There used to be stuff out there that would love to see you that you wouldn't want to see because it might want you for breakfast, lunch, dinner, or a late night snack. And you didn't want to be that snack. So we now are in a position where all of those things we have to protect and preserve and send $19 a month. So they've been encouraging us to think of ourselves that way so others can send $19 a month to save a Negro. Well, we need to save ourselves by having the mental attitudes that everybody else has about duty, honor, obligation, responsibility, accountability, and doing what you need to do to be you and protect those that rely on you and provide for them. As I say, and these are my concluding words, it's all about protecting womanhood and promoting manhood.
Right.
And that's how we got from cave to condo.
Final thoughts from Nisha Wells?
Thank you for joining us on BGP. Like today, I've been in listening mode, learning from you. I enjoyed listening to my elders when they speak. I try to just listen. And so a lot of times, as Mona pointed out earlier, when you listen to like the current content that's being spreaded, a lot of negative things are being said and issues and narratives are being painted between black men and women. It's almost as if we're being painted as enemies instead of supporting one another. So when you take it back to like where it all began, you know, in the past, it's like it's a beautiful thing because it kind of shows how it started and how we ended up in the current position that we are today. So I thank you for that. And I agree that to avoid becoming one of those statistics, you have to be selective with your mind as well as you have to be selective with what's going on in your mind as well as what's going on in between your legs, right? One wrong move and that could be game over.
Do
for
it
you.
wisely.
Screw wisely.
Yes, screw
Yes.
wisely. So I thank you for that wealth of knowledge and I support you as mayor, you know, do your thing. That's
That's
all.
my new hashtag. Screw wisely.
My final thought is thank you, Judge Joe Brown, for being so complimentary. Thank you for saying yes and joining us. We just created a broadcast that we can share with our children and they can share with their children when we're not here. You know, had Nisha not told me it was my time to start a YouTube channel and start out. Shout out to Ronan Martin too. They were like, "You got to do this," and then I grabbed her by the arm and we convinced Adrian to come on here. And 2 years later, we're sitting up here giving Judge Joe Brown his flowers. So thank you very much, sir. We appreciate you. Much success to you on your mayor campaign, and we'll be rooting for you in California. Take care.
I'm not in California now.
I said
No,
we'll be
we
rooting
rooting
for you
from-
in California.
What I'm trying to say is, since I'm not in California and you are, you have to come to Memphis, Tennessee. We're going to make it a place to come to.
Okay.
Bet.
Cool.
So you have an invitation, ladies.
Okay.
Thank
Don't
you.
just stay in California. Plus, you might slide off into the Pacific Ocean the way things are going right now.
Okay.
Not really, but come on through.
We gonna take you up on that. You better answer your phone too, sir. No, I know
Hey,
you
I
will.
was walking this little lady I've got around the house. She's got fuzz, and she's working on being a pampered poodle, a lap dog. So she was looking at me, and quite frankly, I had it down for the wrong week. I'm depending upon my niece, who is my chief of staff, so to speak. She takes no crap from anybody except a lot from me, I guess. But yeah, thank you. I enjoyed it.
You're
Got me
welcome.
smiling.
You're welcome
Yeah,
to
man,
come back
you should've
anytime.
seen me, man. I was being interviewed by 3-5 women, man. It was cool, man. They was grinning at me, man. You know, hey.
Thank you so much. You're always welcome here.
Thank you.
BGP and Judge Joe Brown have just concluded. It was an awesome broadcast. Please share this broadcast, like, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. BGP, to the next episode. We are out of here.
Thank you.